When you're a woman with no friends, people assume something is wrong with you. They whisper, judge, and make up stories in their heads about why you're always alone. But what they never stop to consider is the kind of strength it takes to walk this world by yourself, not because you want to, but because you've chosen peace over pretense. It's not that you don't like people, it's that you've seen too much betrayal disguised as friendship, too many fake smiles hiding real envy, too many promises that meant nothing when tested. And somewhere along the way, you decided that your heart wasn't a place for casual visitors anymore. You see, there's a different kind of woman who walks without a crowd. She doesn't chase validation in group chats or feel pressured to attend every gathering just to feel seen. She's not bitter, she's not broken, she's just done settling for connections that don't feel sacred. When your phone stops ringing, when you stop getting invited, when people fall away like leaves in the wind, what remains is the truth. And that truth is uncomfortable. It forces you to sit with yourself, to face your own reflection without distraction, to understand what it really means to be your own friend. In those quiet seasons, you start to grow in silence. You begin to recognize the voice inside you that was always drowned out by the noise of approval. The same voice that says, you are enough even when nobody claps for you. That voice becomes louder. It begins to heal the parts of you that were always reaching, always needing, always hoping someone would pick you. And when you no longer need to be chosen, that's when you rise. That's when you become dangerous, not because you hurt others, but because you are no longer afraid to be alone. Being a woman with no friends doesn't mean you're lonely. It means you've reached a level of self-awareness that most people avoid. It means you've stopped entertaining what doesn't feel right, even if it leaves you with silence. It means you're now building a life that aligns with your soul, not just your social expectations. You start spending time doing things that make you feel alive, not just accepted. You stop performing. You stop apologizing for taking up space without a companion at your side. It's not an easy path. There will be nights when you question if you've pushed too many people away. Moments where the silence gets loud. But in those moments, you learn to be still, to breathe, to remind yourself that solitude is not a punishment. It's a preparation. A preparation for deeper connections, for stronger boundaries, and for a future where you no longer lose yourself in order to be liked. You stop begging for bare, minimum friendships. You stop calling people just to avoid the echo of your own voice. You become selective with your energy, protective of your peace. And slowly, the right people begin to appear not because you chased them, but because your energy attracted those who recognize your worth without needing a history or explanation. So if you're a woman with no friends, know this. You're not broken. You're becoming. You're learning to belong to yourself before you belong anywhere else. And that is not weakness. That is power. Keep walking. You're not alone. Being surrounded yet still feeling alone is one of the most haunting feelings a person can experience. You laugh when others laugh, you nod when you're expected to respond, but inside there's an emptiness no one notices. You could be in a room full of people, even people who claim to love you, and still feel unseen. This kind of loneliness doesn't come from isolation, it comes from disconnection, from the realization that presence doesn't equal understanding. That sometimes even the people closest to you don't really know who you are or what you carry inside. That's the kind of loneliness that changes you, and for many women, it's a silent battle they fight every single day. At some point, you stop trying to explain yourself. You stop reaching for conversations that only scratch the surface. You stop looking for depth in shallow spaces, not because you don't crave connection, but because you're tired of being the only one showing up fully. There's a deep exhaustion that comes from constantly being the listener, the caretaker, the strong one, while no one pauses to ask how you're holding up. So slowly you begin to retreat, Not dramatically, not in anger, but quietly. You pull back. You protect your space. You start giving energy only to what feeds you in return. And then you realize that loneliness isn't always about being alone. It's about being misunderstood, misread, misplaced. It's about showing the world your smile while hiding your ache. People may see your strength, your beauty, your success, but they don't see the cracks beneath the surface. They don't see the tears you wipe away at night, the moments when your voice trembles as you say, "I'm fine." Because that's the only answer you think people want to hear. But in this emotional distance, something starts to shift. The silence teaches you things noise never could. You begin to discover parts of yourself that were buried under years of expectations and roles. You learn to enjoy your own company, not out of necessity, but out of choice. You start creating moments of joy without waiting for someone to witness them. You begin to define yourself not through your relationships, but through your values, your thoughts, your own sense of worth. And in that space you grow, not loudly, not with fanfare, but steadily, deeply, authentically. Being surrounded and still feeling alone also pushes you to reassess the people in your life. You start asking harder questions. Who truly sees me? Who listens without judgment? Who would notice if I stopped talking? And sometimes the answers are painful. You realize that proximity doesn't mean loyalty, and history doesn't guarantee care. You learn that some people are only around because of what you give them, not because of who you are. And that realization is sobering, but it's also freeing, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you accept it, you begin to rebuild. You no longer keep people close out of guilt or habit. You no longer fear the quiet. You use it to reconnect with your intuition, to heal, to reset. You learn to identify genuine connection by how it feels, not how it looks. And most importantly, you stop settling for emotional crumbs when you know you deserve a feast. So if you feel alone in a crowd, know this isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new chapter. One where you stop shrinking yourself to fit in and start expanding into who you truly are. One where your solitude becomes sacred, not sad. You're not invisible, you're awakening. There's a point in life when you stop needing loud applause and start appreciating quiet truth. That's when you realize that being real in a fake world comes with a price, and often that price is isolation. It's not because you're doing something wrong, but because truth, honesty, and authenticity are threatening to those who thrive on masks. When you refuse to play the game, when you stop pretending just to be accepted, people begin to distance themselves not because you changed, but because you stopped hiding who you really are. Being real means saying no when it's easier to go along. It means standing for something, even if you stand alone. It's turning down shallow conversations that go nowhere, rejecting connections built on convenience rather than depth. You start to notice how many people smile to your face while quietly hoping you fail. How many support you as long as you stay small, quiet, agreeable. But the moment you start to speak your truth, live unapologetically, and stop shrinking to fit their comfort, suddenly you're too much, too serious, or too distant. What they're really saying is you're no longer easy to control, and that's the cost of being real. You outgrow the versions of you that made others comfortable but left you empty. You stop laughing at jokes that offend your soul. You stop chasing after people who only show up when it benefits them. You begin to detach, not in bitterness, but in wisdom. You understand that peace is better than popularity, and that keeping your integrity intact is more fulfilling than fitting into broken systems. There's a deep kind of power in being real, because once you stop performing, you start living. You stop measuring your worth by how many people surround you and start valuing the quality of those who remain when you speak from the heart. You may find yourself with fewer people around you, but you also find something else, freedom, real freedom. The kind that comes when you no longer owe anyone a version of yourself that isn't true. Being real also means being vulnerable. You admit when you're hurt, when you're healing, when you're figuring things out. And that honesty, it makes people uncomfortable, because most people don't want to see what's real. They want the highlight reel. They want your smile, your success, your strength, but not your struggles. So when you bring your full self to the table, many walk away. And that hurts, but it also clears the space for people who are not afraid of the raw, the real, the unfinished. You learn to sit in rooms where you don't have to wear a mask. You become okay with being misunderstood. You let go of the need to explain your growth to people still committed to their comfort zones. And slowly, you build a life that's aligned with your truth, not their expectations. So yes, the cost of being real is high. It costs fake friendships, shallow attention, temporary applause. But the reward is priceless. You gain your soul back. You wake up without the weight of pretending. You sleep at night knowing you showed up as your full self, not a watered-down version designed to make others feel okay. And once you live that way, you can't go back. You won't want to, because even if the world doesn't clap for the real you, you will. And that's enough. There's something strange about betrayal. It never comes from strangers. It always arrives wrapped in familiarity, often with a face you once trusted, a voice you once leaned on. And when it hits, it doesn't just bruise your heart. It fractures your understanding of loyalty, of love, of safety. Betrayal is a brutal gift because it shatters the illusion you've been clinging to, even if it breaks your heart in the process. And yet, somehow, it leaves behind the truth raw, undeniable, and necessary. It teaches you things comfort never could. At first, it feels like devastation. You replay the conversations, you question the memories, you search for the moment when everything shifted. You ask yourself what you missed, what signs you ignored, and why someone you cared for could so easily turn their back. It eats at you, not just because of what happened, but because of what it says about your judgment. How could you not have seen it coming? That's what haunts you. The trust you gave so freely, the love you poured in so genuinely, now feels like a wound wide open. But slowly the pain starts to show you something deeper. It shows you that betrayal doesn't destroy you. It exposes what wasn't real. It removes the illusions, the people who weren't loyal, the connections that weren't rooted in truth. You start to see that some people were only in your life because of what you offered, not who you were. And when that offering stopped, your energy, your attention, your benefits, they showed you exactly where they stood. As hard as it is, betrayal clarifies. It's a filter you never asked for, but one you desperately needed. And eventually, the heartbreak turns into armor, not the kind that makes you hard or bitter, but the kind that makes you wiser. Stronger, you begin to move differently. You listen more closely to your intuition, to those subtle gut feelings you used to brush aside. You no longer confuse closeness with loyalty or history with honesty. You learn that some people were only meant to walk with you for a season, and forcing them into a lifetime only delays your growth. Betrayal also forces you to turn inward, to face your own reflection, to stop waiting for someone else to give you closure and start giving it to yourself. You stop asking why they hurt you and start asking why you stayed so long. And that self-confrontation, it's not easy, but it's transformative. It teaches you boundaries. It teaches you self-respect. It teaches you to stop giving your heart to people who haven't earned the right to hold it. And one day, without warning, the weight of that betrayal lifts. It doesn't mean you've forgotten. It doesn't mean you've fully healed. But it means you're no longer defined by what they did. You reclaim your voice. You take your lessons and carry them like wisdom instead of wounds. You stop seeing yourself as a victim and start recognizing your survival as a sign of your strength. You walked through betrayal and didn't let it make you small. That matters. So yes, betrayal is brutal. But it's also a turning point. It's the moment when you stop settling for half-hearted love and start demanding the kind of respect and loyalty you've always given. It wakes you up, it sharpens you, and most importantly, it frees you from the illusions that were holding you back. Some people will betray you. Let them, and then let them go. There's something powerful that happens when you stop looking for strength in others and start finding it in your own silence. Loneliness at first feels like a void, an emptiness you're desperate to escape, but stay in it long enough and it begins to transform. It sharpens your senses, it strips away the noise, and before you know it, what once felt like abandonment starts to feel like clarity. You realize that being alone isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's protection, sometimes it's preparation, and often it's where your greatest growth happens. When you have no one to call, no one to lean on, no one to speak to, what do? You listen to yourself, you sit with thoughts you used to run from. You learn to be your own comfort, your own counsel, your own strength. And it's hard, so hard, but it's also sacred, because no one can fake their way through solitude. No one can pretend when they're by themselves. You come face to face with the version of you that you usually distract yourself from, the real you. And that meeting, it's life-changing. You begin to see how much of your strength was tied to the presence of others, how you measured your worth through their attention, your peace through their approval. And without them, you feel lost at first. But over time, you stop waiting for someone to remind you who you are. You start doing that for yourself. You start rewriting the story instead of I have no one. It becomes I'm getting to know myself. Instead of why am I always left out? It becomes maybe this silence is what I needed to hear my truth. The narrative shifts, and with it, your power returns. Solitude gives you perspective. You start to recognize the patterns, the ways you overextended yourself just to be liked, the times you ignored red flags just to keep someone around, the moments you abandoned your needs just to avoid conflict. You see it all, and while it hurts, it also heals, because you can't change what you don't acknowledge, and solitude forces you to see clearly. It makes you honest with yourself in a way nothing else can. Eventually, you realize that not everyone can walk with you into the next chapter of your life, not because they're bad people, but because your growth demands a different environment. One where you're not constantly explaining your worth. One where your energy isn't drained just to maintain shallow peace. And once you've had even a taste of that peace, the kind that comes from being grounded, alone, but not lonely, you become very protective of it. You stop allowing chaos to return just because it's familiar. You stop letting people back in just because they say the right words. You become selective, intentional, empowered, and the more time you spend alone, the more you see how strong you really are. You didn't crumble, you didn't give up, you didn't break down and stay broken. You rebuilt quietly, steadily, fiercely. You became the person you used to seek in others. That's the kind of strength no one can take away from you. It's rooted, it's earned, it's yours. So yes, loneliness can feel like a curse at first. But if you embrace it, if you walk through it instead of running from it, you'll discover that it's actually where lions are born, where leaders rise, where your spirit learns to roar not in noise, but in presence. There comes a moment when you stop waiting for people to choose you, include you, or understand you, and you begin to choose yourself. That's the moment when everything changes. Choosing peace over people is not easy. It often feels like walking away from what's familiar, even if it's hurtful. It means letting go of conversations that drain you, relationships that confuse you, and expectations that suffocate your spirit. It means releasing the need to be liked in exchange for the desire to be whole. You don't do it because you think you're better than anyone. You do it because you've realized that your energy is too valuable to be scattered in places that don't honor it. At first, people won't understand. They'll accuse you of being cold, distant, selfish. They'll question your silence, your boundaries, your decisions. But what they won't see is the years you spent giving too much, stretching yourself thin just to make others feel comfortable. They won't remember the times you said yes when your heart was screaming no. They won't see the toll it took on your mental and emotional health to constantly be the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who held everyone else together while quietly falling apart. And so, one day you stop, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've finally started caring about yourself. You begin to make decisions not out of guilt or obligation, but out of alignment. You cancel plans that don't feel right. You disengage from gossip. You say less and observe more. And the more you choose peace, the more you realize how noisy your life used to be. How much of your time was spent managing the emotions of others, explaining yourself, defending your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You begin to see that peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of clarity, stillness, truth. Choosing peace also means losing people. That's the part no one talks about. You'll lose friends who don't understand your silence, relatives who take your boundaries as betrayal, and lovers who mistook your love for permission to overstep. But in losing them, you gain something far more powerful. You gain yourself. You stop feeling the need to prove anything. You stop negotiating your value. You stop shrinking so others can feel big. And slowly, the chaos that once surrounded you is replaced with a quiet kind of power, a groundedness, a knowing. This kind of peace doesn't come from others validating you. It comes from knowing who you are when no one is watching. It's in the quiet mornings where you sip your coffee without reaching for your phone. It's in the long walks where your mind is still, not spinning. It's in the firm no you give without apology. It's in the nights you sleep peacefully, not replaying arguments or anticipating rejection. That's the peace you protect with your life, because once you've tasted it, you never want to go back to noise disguised as love, attention wrapped in manipulation, or connection built on fear. Eventually, people who once demanded your presence will wonder why they lost access to you. And maybe they'll never understand. But that's not your job anymore. Your job is to stay aligned with the version of you that no longer begs to belong. The one who stands alone not in sadness but in strength. The one who walks away not in anger but in wisdom. Because choosing peace over people isn't giving up, it's growing up.